One bright day, twin princes Tom and John from a neighboring kingdom visited Cinderella's land. Prince Leo welcomed them with excitement, suggesting, "Let's throw a yoga party. Who knows, we might even find our soulmates." The idea thrilled everyone. Meanwhile, Cinderella's half-sisters, Cassandra and Jezebel, were causing trouble. While Cassandra was combing her hair in front of the mirror, Jezebel secretly deceived her. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, you're so ugly," Cassandra muttered. Frustrated, she threw her comb, causing the mirror to shatter. From the pieces, Jezebel appeared with a sly smile. As they argued, a messenger pigeon flew through the window with a note tied to its foot. The sisters fought over it, ripping the paper in half. One piece stayed with Cassandra, while the other flew away. "Oh no, the paper's gone," they cried. Cassandra read a note aloud. "Join the yoga party. Be our princess." She turned to Jezebel. "What's yoga?" Jezebel suggested they sneak into the palace to find out. That night, they crept past the guards into Cinderella's room. There, they found her sitting cross-legged, eyes closed, chanting, "What is she doing?" Cassandra whispered. "She's casting a spell on us. Let's join in," Jezebel urged. In her haste to stay quiet, Cassandra tripped and fell in front of Cinderella. "What are you two doing here?" Cinderella asked. We're sleepwalkers," Cassandra stammered, flustered. Cinderella sighed, realizing they had sneaked in. "I was doing breathing exercises for yoga. If you want, I can teach you." The next morning, they met by the river for their first lesson. Cinderella demonstrated walking with a book on her head, moving gracefully along a straight line. "This is easy," Cassandra said confidently, only to drop the book on the first step. "Watch me," Jezebel boasted. But after 2 steps, she too fell, the book tumbling to the ground. The sisters were struggling, but determined to keep going. Next, Cinderella taught them the vocal exercises, breathing deeply while saying, "Mama, Mimi." But Cassandra's breath smelled so bad that Jezebel gagged. "Did you eat fish with chocolate for breakfast?" They laughed. Their practice continued, with the sisters failing at every turn. Jezebel fell asleep during tree pose, and Cassandra stuck out her tongue like a dog, puffing out air in exaggerated breaths. The following day, Cinderella presented the ultimate challenge, the hardest yoga move. "If you can do this, you've completed your princess yoga training." Cassandra and Jezebel were eager. "We'll show the princes. They'll want to marry us," they said. Cinderella demonstrated, laying face down on the grass, completing the pose with ease. The sisters tried, but their bodies trembled with exhaustion. "It's so hard. I can't do it," Cassandra cried. Just as they were about to give up, they imagined themselves dancing with the twin princes, filling them with determination. They managed to hold the pose just a little longer, but collapsed in exhaustion when it was over. Cinderella congratulated them, handing them a beautifully wrapped gift. "You did it. Here's your reward." The sisters eagerly opened it, only to find sneakers and sports clothes. They were furious. "She tricked us," they screamed. Determined to get revenge, they secretly took Cinderella's favorite clothes and left the palace. The day of the yoga party arrived. The sisters, wearing Cinderella's dresses, arrived at the palace, hoping to impress the princes. But as they entered, the guests laughed. The twin princes, Tom and John, stood at the entrance, glaring. "You can't enter in these clothes," they said. The sisters protested. "But we thought we couldn't be princesses without these clothes." As they stood there, they saw the princes holding hands with two other girls, realizing they had been wrong. Being a true princess wasn't about fancy clothes, but about being happy, eating healthy, and embracing kindness. The sisters left, humbled, and understanding the real lesson of the yoga party. Once upon a time, in a beautiful kingdom surrounded by magical forests, there lived a kind and gentle young girl named Cinderella. She had a heart full of love and always treated everyone with kindness, no matter how they treated her. But she wasn't treated very well by her stepmother and stepsisters, who made her do all the chores and never showed her any love. Even so, Cinderella never complained and kept her dreams alive. One day, as Cinderella was sweeping the floor, she heard a loud growling noise coming from outside the window. When she peeked outside, she saw something terrifying. There was a big bad wolf walking around the garden. This wasn't just any wolf. This was the bad wolf who loved to cause trouble in the kingdom. He had a terrible reputation for scaring the animals and stealing their food. The other animals had learned to stay away from him, and even the bravest knights were afraid to face him. But Cinderella, being brave and kind, decided she wouldn't be afraid. She grabbed a broom and walked outside to face the wolf. "Hello, Mr. Wolf," she said, her voice calm but strong. "What are you doing here?" The bad wolf growled and flashed his sharp teeth. "I'm here to make trouble," he said, "and nobody can stop me." Cinderella stood tall and didn't back down. "I don't think causing trouble is the way to go," she said kindly. "You don't need to be bad. I know you can change if you try." The bad wolf scoffed. "Change? Me? I enjoy being bad. It's fun." Cinderella smiled and said, "But if you're always bad, you'll never find true happiness. The people who are kind and good-hearted are the ones who truly have everything they need." The bad wolf was confused. He had never thought about it that way. He had always believed that causing fear and chaos would bring him power, but Cinderella's words made him pause. He had never experienced happiness or kindness, only loneliness and fear. Just then, Cinderella's fairy godmother appeared with a swirl of sparkles. "What's going on here, my dear?" she asked, seeing the bad wolf standing before them. Cinderella explained, and the fairy godmother, seeing the potential for good in the wolf, had an idea. "Mr. Wolf," she said, "I can grant you a gift, an opportunity to change. You can choose to be kind, and I will give you the chance to help others instead of causing harm." The bad wolf hesitated. He had never been offered kindness before. "What would that be like?" he asked, his growl softer. "Try it," said the fairy godmother. "Let's see what happens." With a wave of her magic wand, the fairy godmother turned the bad wolf into a smaller, friendlier wolf, one with soft fur and a gentle smile. He felt different, like a weight had been lifted from his heart. "Now you can make a choice," Cinderella said. "You don't have to be the bad wolf anymore. You can help others, just like I do." The bad wolf, now no longer a threat, felt warmth spread through him for the first time. He looked around and saw the animals that used to be afraid of him, watching from behind the trees. He slowly approached them and said, "I'm sorry for scaring you before. I want to be your friend now." The animals, at first unsure, cautiously approached him. To their surprise, the wolf wasn't scary at all. He even helped the rabbits gather food and offered to protect the smaller creatures from danger. As the days passed, the bad wolf became known as the good wolf. He was no longer feared, but respected for his kindness. He even helped Cinderella with her chores when he could, always smiling and laughing as he worked beside her. One day, there was a grand ball at the palace. The prince invited all the people in the kingdom, and Cinderella was invited too. Thanks to her fairy godmother, Cinderella had a beautiful gown and sparkling shoes. As she walked into the ball, everyone was amazed by her beauty and grace. The prince noticed her immediately and asked her to dance. The bad wolf, now reformed, was also at the ball. He had become a guardian of the forest and was invited as a guest of honor for his transformation. He smiled as he watched Cinderella dance with the prince, knowing she had helped him become a better wolf. And so, Cinderella not only found love and happiness, but she also helped the bad wolf find his true nature, a kind and helpful friend to all. The kingdom became a place where kindness ruled, and the animals, big and small, lived in harmony with one another. And they all lived happily ever after. Once upon a time, in a distant land, there lived a beautiful girl named Cinderella. She had lost her mother long ago, and her father had lovingly raised her. However, when her father remarried, Cinderella's life changed drastically. Her new stepmother and stepsisters moved into her home, but they harbored intense jealousy toward her beauty and kindness. Her stepsisters were neither as attractive nor as kind as Cinderella, and they were spoiled and rude. One day, Cinderella's father left on a long journey for work. As soon as he was gone, her stepmother and stepsisters made her life miserable. They forced her to live in the attic, took away her fine clothes, and made her do all the housework. Despite her exhausting chores, neither her stepmother nor her stepsisters showed her any sympathy. Cinderella's only friends were the birds and mice that visited her attic window. On cold nights, she would secretly warm herself by the dying fire in the chimney. One day, a grand announcement was made by the kingdom. The prince was hosting a ball, and all eligible young women were invited. The stepsisters were ecstatic, certain that one of them would catch the prince's eye. They prepared for the ball for days, having beautiful gowns made and dreaming of palace life. On the day of the ball, they commanded Cinderella to help them get ready, treating her harshly as usual. With her stepsisters finally ready for the ball, Cinderella gathered the courage to ask if she could attend. Her stepmother mocked her, telling her that the prince was looking for a wife, not a maid, and that she had chores to finish. Heartbroken, Cinderella watched them leave for the ball and began to cry, longing to join the festivities. At that moment, a bright light appeared, and from it emerged a beautiful fairy. She comforted Cinderella and promised to help her attend the ball. With a wave of her magic wand, the fairy transformed a pumpkin into a magnificent carriage, turned 6 mice into horses, and transformed another mouse into a coachman. Then, with a final flick of her wand, she transformed Cinderella's tattered clothes into a stunning ball gown, complete with glass slippers. The fairy warned Cinderella that the magic would wear off at midnight, and she must return home before then. Excited, Cinderella climbed into the carriage and was whisked away to the ball. When she arrived, her beauty captivated everyone in the ballroom, including her stepmother and stepsisters, who failed to recognize her. The prince was especially enchanted. He approached Cinderella, ignoring the stepsisters, and asked her for a dance. Cinderella and the prince danced the night away, lost in the music and each other. Time passed unnoticed until Cinderella saw the clock. It was nearly midnight. Remembering the fairy's warning, she panicked and fled the ballroom, leaving behind a glass slipper as she ran down the stairs. The magic wore off as she reached home, and she returned to her attic, her magical gown now back to rags. The next day, the prince determined to find the mysterious woman who had stolen his heart. ordered his men to search the kingdom for the owner of the glass slipper. They went from house to house, but none of the girls could fit the shoe. Finally, they arrived at Cinderella's home. Overjoyed, Cinderella prepared to meet the prince's men, but her stepmother, cruel as ever, locked her in the attic. While the prince's men tried the shoe on her stepsisters, neither of whom could fit it. Cinderella's mouse friends managed to steal the key from the stepmother and freed her. She hurried downstairs just in time and asked to try the slipper. Her stepmother and stepsisters laughed at the idea, but the prince's men insisted that every girl in the kingdom had to try it. To everyone's astonishment, the slipper fit Cinderella perfectly. The prince's men immediately took her to the palace. When the prince saw her, he instantly recognized her as the girl from the ball. Overcome with joy, he asked her to marry him, and Cinderella, with tears of happiness, accepted. Cinderella and the prince were married in a grand celebration, and they lived happily ever after. In a distant land, Cinderella lived with her two cruel stepsisters, who treated her terribly and forced her to do all of their chores. One day, the three sisters went on a shopping trip, but they made Cinderella carry all their bags. "Take this quickly, I can't feel my arms anymore," Cassandra complained. "Hurry up, there are still so many stores to visit," Jezebel added. Cinderella followed them patiently through the shops. After a while, a beggar dressed in ragged clothes appeared in front of them. Just as he was about to ask for help, Jezebel harshly said, "Get out of our way!" And the sisters continued walking. But Cinderella couldn't ignore the beggar. She quietly handed him one of the bags, hoping it would help him earn some money. The beggar was so grateful that he said, "You are a kind person, and I hope all your wishes come true." Before Cinderella could respond, Cassandra shouted, "What are you talking to that beggar about? Come here right now!" It was an order, and Cinderella hurried to catch up with her sisters. That evening, when they returned home, the sisters eagerly looked through the items they had bought, but soon realized that one of the bags was missing. "One of the bags is missing! This is your fault! Tell me where you hid it!" Jezebel accused Cinderella. "We saw you eyeing those bags. You stole it." "I didn't steal it. Someone else must have taken it," Cinderella explained, but they interrogated her so harshly that she eventually admitted she had given the bag to the beggar. Her sisters were furious and began shouting at her. Just then, someone knocked on the door. It was the handsome prince. He stepped inside and said, "If I'm not mistaken, there's a young girl here who helped a beggar." The sisters immediately began arguing, each claiming they were the one who had helped the beggar. "My prince, the whole country knows I'm very kind and helpful," they said, pushing and shoving each other. As the prince watched them fight, he noticed Cinderella standing sadly nearby. He walked over to her, and Cinderella quietly said, "I'm the one who helped the beggar." "She's lying, my prince! Don't believe her!" the sisters cried. The prince gently took Cinderella's hands in his. "She's not lying," he said. "I know it was her because I was the beggar." Cinderella looked at him in surprise and joy. The prince then turned to the sisters and said, "I have always been known as a man of the people, which is why I dressed as a beggar today." The sisters, ashamed, lowered their heads. Cinderella, now happy and free from her cruel stepsisters, went on to live a joyful life with the prince. It was a reminder that those who do good in the world will always be rewarded.
Once upon a time, in a distant land, there lived a kind and beautiful girl. Sadly, when her mother passed away, her father remarried a cruel woman who had two equally wicked daughters. The new stepmother and stepsisters mistreated her terribly. They wouldn't let her eat with them and would always make her clean up their mess. While they went out and enjoyed themselves, she was left at home to do all the chores. Everyone at home called her Cinderella. When she felt exhausted, she would sit by the fireplace with her cat in her lap, trying to warm herself by the fading fire. One day, they received an invitation to a grand ball at the palace in honor of the prince, where all eligible girls were invited. As the stepmother prepared her daughters for the ball, Cinderella was forced to help them. She longed to go, but they mocked her. "You're not allowed to go," they said. "The prince must choose the most beautiful girls, and that's us." On the night of the ball, Cinderella was left home alone, feeling sad. Just then, a bright light appeared from the chimney, and a fairy godmother appeared before her. "Don't worry, my dear," said the fairy. "I'm here to help you. You will go to the ball, but first bring me the biggest pumpkin from the garden and 7 mice. With a wave of her magic wand, the fairy transformed the pumpkin into a magnificent carriage, the mice into beautiful white horses, and one into the coachman. Cinderella was now ready, but she hesitated, saying, "But I don't know how to dance." The fairy reassured her, "With these magical shoes, you will dance beautifully. But remember, my dear, the magic will wear off exactly at midnight. You must return before the clock strikes 12. Grateful, Cinderella promised to return before midnight, but before she left, she asked, "Will I ever see you again?" The fairy smiled, "I will always be by your side." At the palace, Cinderella's elegance and beauty captivated everyone, including her stepsisters, who didn't recognize her. Even the prince was entranced by her. The king and queen were equally impressed. The prince immediately asked Cinderella to dance, and she glided across the floor, thanks to her magic shoes. Meanwhile, her stepsisters were overcome with jealousy and anger. As the night wore on, Cinderella forgot about the time. Suddenly, she noticed the clock. It was nearly midnight. She rushed out of the ballroom, but as she ran down the stairs, one of her magical shoes slipped off. There wasn't time to retrieve it, and she kept running. The prince, determined to find the mysterious girl, followed the shoe. His men traveled throughout the kingdom, visiting every home and asking every young woman to try on the shoe. When they finally arrived at Cinderella's house, both stepsisters tried to fit into the shoe, but it wouldn't fit either of them. The prince's men insisted on seeing the other girl in the house. Cinderella tried on the shoe, and it fit perfectly. The prince's men declared, "Come with us, Cinderella. The prince is waiting for you at the palace." When she arrived at the palace, the prince instantly recognized her. Overjoyed, he knelt before her and asked, "Will you marry me, my princess?" With great joy, Cinderella said, "Yes." And they lived happily ever after. Cinderella then asked, "But how did my shoe remain magical?" The fairy godmother appeared once more and answered, "I have always been with you, my dear. I was by your side the whole time." And they lived happily ever after.